true haunted forest stories that will terrify you. There are places on Earth that seem to hold a dark secret. Places where the air is thick with a strange energy, where every crack of a twig or rustle of leaves sends a chill down your spine. These are the haunted forests, locations where the line between the living and the dead seems to blur. Whether it's the whispered voices that call out from the trees, the strange shadows that flicker in the distance, or the feeling of being watched even when you're alone, these forests have witnessed horrors that the world will never truly understand. In these forests, there are stories of people who ventured in, only to never come back the same, or sometimes not at all. If you have ever wondered what it's like to feel true fear, these are the stories that will answer your questions, and maybe leave you with even more. Story 1. The Wendigo of the Pine Barrens. In the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, there's a creature that has haunted the forest for centuries. A creature so terrifying that even the bravest souls avoid venturing too deep into its territory. This creature is known as the Wendigo. The legend tells of a spirit that possesses humans, driving them to madness and ultimately turning them into ravenous monsters with an insatiable hunger for human flesh. The story of the Pine Barrens Wendigo goes back to the early 20th century, when a group of hunters entered the forest for a weekend trip. They were well versed in the dangers of the wilderness, but nothing could prepare them for the strange sounds they heard in the middle of the night. At first, they thought it was a bear, but the sounds were too human. Disturbed by the unsettling noises, the group decided to leave early the next morning. As they packed up, one of the hunters was found missing, his tracks leading deeper into the woods. A search party was formed, but they found nothing. All that remained was the smell of something foul, the unmistakable feeling that something was watching them. To this day, people who hike the Pine Barrens often report strange sightings, shadowy figures that vanish when approached, disembodied voices, and the unmistakable feeling that something hungry is nearby. The Wendigo, they say, never truly left. Story 2. The Shadow People of the Aokigahara Forest. The Aokigahara Forest in Japan, also known as the Suicide Forest, is infamous for its history of tragic deaths. But there's something far darker, hidden beneath the surface of the forest's dense trees, an eerie presence that many have come to describe as shadow people. A man named Taro decided to visit Aokigahara to hike and explore the infamous forest. As he ventured deeper into the woods, he felt an overwhelming sense of unease. It wasn't until nightfall that things began to take a terrifying turn. Strange, shadowy figures seemed to appear from the corners of his vision, disappearing every time he tried to look directly at them. He quickly realized that the shadows weren't just tricks of the light. There was something deeply unnatural about them. They followed him through the forest, getting closer with every step. In a panic, Taro ran, but the figures kept pace with him, always just at the edge of his sight. It wasn't until he managed to escape the forest that he realized the full horror of what had happened. The shadow people weren't just spirits. They were entities that trapped souls, feeding off their fear. Taro never spoke of his experience again, but those who visit Aokigahara still report seeing the same terrifying shadows that seem to stalk the living. Story 3. The Black-Eyed Children of the Forest of Dean Deep. In the heart of the Forest of Dean, in Gloucestershire, England, there have been numerous reports of strange children with completely black eyes. Known as the Black-Eyed Children, these figures are said to appear in the woods at night, asking for help or to be allowed into nearby homes. One local resident, Emma, recalled a terrifying encounter she had while walking her dog late one evening. As she wandered deeper into the woods, she noticed two children standing by the side of the path. Their faces were pale, their eyes completely black, no whites, no pupils. They stood still, motionless, staring at her with an unnatural intensity. Feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, Emma turned to leave. But as she did, the children suddenly spoke in unison, asking, "Can we come in? Please let us in." Terrified, Emma ran back to her car and never returned to that part of the forest again. Locals believe that these children are the spirits of the lost, cursed to roam the forest for eternity. Their black eyes are said to be a symbol of the darkness that consumes them. Story 4. The Haunting of the Devil's Tramping Ground. In the dense woods of North Carolina, there's a place known as the Devil's Tramping Ground. It's a circle of barren earth that never seems to grow anything. Trees surrounding the spot appear twisted and unnaturally bent, and the area is said to be cursed. Several visitors have claimed to experience unexplainable phenomena when they set up camp near the circle. One night, a group of friends decided to spend the night in the area, determined to uncover the truth behind the strange occurrences. But as the night wore on, they began to hear footsteps in the woods. Slow, deliberate steps that grew louder, as if something or someone was approaching. Suddenly, their campfire flickered out and the temperature dropped significantly. The group saw a figure standing just outside their camp, its face obscured by shadow. When they turned to grab their belongings and leave, the figure was gone, but the feeling of being watched remained. The next morning, they found that their tents had been slashed open and their supplies were scattered across the forest floor. No one saw or heard anyone else in the woods that night, but the damage was undeniable. The Devil's Tramping Ground remains a place of mystery, a spot that continues to terrorize those who dare to venture too close. Story 5. The Ghostly Woman of the Epping Forest. The Epping Forest in Essex, England, is notorious for its strange sightings and eerie legends. Among the most famous is the tale of the ghostly woman who wanders the forest late at night, dressed in a tattered gown, her face obscured by long, flowing hair. One man, Darren, was walking through the forest one evening when he came across the woman. She was standing motionless by a tree, her back turned to him. As Darren approached, he noticed her strange posture, slightly hunched as if in pain. He called out to her, but she didn't respond. Hesitant, he reached out to tap her on the shoulder. As his hand made contact, the woman spun around, revealing a face twisted in anguish with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce into his soul. Darren froze in terror as the woman screamed, a chilling, unearthly scream that echoed through the trees. Before he could react, the woman vanished into the night, leaving Darren standing in the middle of the dark forest, his heart pounding. He has never returned to Epping Forest since that night, and neither has anyone else who has witnessed the woman. Story 6. The Screaming Forest of Hoia Baciu. Known as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania, the Hoia Baciu Forest is infamous for its terrifying reputation. Located near Cluj-Napoca, the forest is the site of multiple unexplained disappearances, strange lights, and unsettling sounds that no one can quite explain. One chilling story comes from a group of hikers who ventured into the forest one evening. As they made their way through the dense trees, they suddenly heard loud, terrifying screams coming from deeper in the forest. It wasn't just the sound of animals, it was a human scream, echoing through the trees. The hikers tried to locate the source, but the screams seemed to come from every direction. As they turned to leave, they noticed that the trees around them had shifted, as if they were closing in. They ran back to the edge of the forest, only to find that they had lost track of time and were hours away from their original destination. They've never spoken of what they saw, but the chilling screams of Hoia Baciu still haunt them. Story 7. The Crying Ghost of the Black Forest. The Black Forest in Germany is famous for its dark legends and eerie happenings. But one of the most terrifying stories comes from an encounter with a crying ghost. In the 1960s, a young couple was hiking through the forest when they heard the soft, heart-wrenching sound of a woman crying. They followed the sound, growing, increasingly disturbed as the cries grew louder. Eventually, they found a clearing where a woman in a long white dress was kneeling on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. When they called out to her, she looked up, revealing a face contorted in pain and sorrow. Before they could speak, the woman vanished into thin air, leaving only the sound of her cries lingering in the air. To this day, no one knows who the woman was or why she remains trapped in the forest, but her cries are still heard by those who wander too far from the beaten path. Story 8. The Mysterious Lights of the Red Forest. The Red Forest in Ukraine, a site near the Chernobyl disaster area, is one of the most radioactive and haunting places on Earth. It is said that on certain nights, strange, unexplainable lights appear in the sky above the forest. A group of explorers ventured into the Red Forest in search of these lights. As they set up camp, they began to notice strange movements in the distance, glowing orbs that floated in the air, changing color and shape. At first, the explorers thought they were just reflections, but the lights continued to move toward them. Suddenly, the lights surrounded their camp and the air grew thick with a strange energy. The explorers were overcome with an inexplicable sense of dread, and the lights seemed to be watching them, silently hovering just above the trees. One by one, the explorers packed up and left, unable to shake the feeling that something far more sinister was at play. Haunted forests are places where the earth holds on to its dark past, where the veil between the living and the dead seems to disappear. These stories remind us that some places are not just quiet, they're waiting. Whether it's an ancient curse, restless spirits, or something far more sinister, the forests of the world are filled with mysteries that may never be explained. So, the next time you walk into the woods, ask yourself, what's waiting for you beyond the trees? And is it already watching?